Welcome to Void Signal.
Greetings, passengers of Void Signal. Tonight's transmission comes from very far out, past the safe orbits, past the places we've mapped and named. We're heading into a storm that never had a sky to begin with, a drilling platform, a gas giant, an energy signal buried beneath layers of pressure no human was meant to touch, and something already waiting in the clouds. Settle in, lower the lights. Let's begin. My recorder picks up the vibration before my bones do. It starts as a tremor in the desk-mounted mic, a soft insistence beneath Commander Ruiz's voice. The sound isn't loud. It's too low for that, more like a pressure you can hear, a rhythm under the station's metal skin. Helios 9, confirm descent profile, Mission Control says. Their words arrive clean, delayed by a fraction, folded through relay in orbit. That small delay has always felt comforting to me. Proof there is distance. Proof there is a way back. Commander Ruiz rests her palm against the console as if she can feel Uranus through it. She is compact, disciplined, and built around decisions. Confirm, descent stable, thrusters nominal. We're on the corridor. I keep my own voice measured for the log. Dr. Nolan Pierce, mission physicist. Log begins at T-3 hours to target depth. Objective remains: investigate anomalous energy signatures detected by orbital survey. Hypothesis: localized. Electrodynamic phenomena within storm layers. Dr. Park snorts from the lab bench without looking up from her tablet. Say it like you mean it, Nolan. We're here because something in there is making numbers we don't have names for. Hale glides past behind us, arms full of cable bundles, his shoulders brushing the corridor as though the station is already tighter than it should be. If the numbers start eating people, do we get hazard pay? Ruiz doesn't turn. If the numbers start eating people, Mr. Hale, I'll authorize you to punch them. Copy that, Hale mutters. Punch the math. I smile without showing teeth. The humor helps, but it's always thin out here, stretched across an abyss. Helios 9 is not a ship built for comfort. It's a drilling platform with a spinal column of reinforced trusses, heat systems layered like muscle, and a drill assembly that descends below the main habitat like a spear. Outside, Uranus is a world of blue depth and opaque violence. You don't see land, you don't see horizon. You see color and motion and lightning that blooms silently, sheeted across storm walls like bruises. The viewports have polarizing shutters, but even filtered, the atmosphere looks wrong. Not in a way I can define to the others. Wrong in the way a room looks after someone has been standing in it too long. Pressure climbing, Orpheus announces. The station's AI uses an even synthetic baritone, chosen to be calming. It's never calming. External density increasing, stabilization thrusters compensating. Ruiz leans closer to her display. Compensating how much? Within acceptable range, Orpheus replies. Thrust vector adjustments, 8% above baseline. 8% is not nothing, Hale says. That's the station doing more work just to sit still. Park finally looks up. Her eyes are bright with a hunger I've seen in too many scientists, including myself. It's just sheer. We're cutting into layers that haven't been sampled at this depth. That's the point. I watch the storm bands on the external feed. Turbulence curls like smoke around the station's shadowed silhouette. For a moment, I think I see alignment. Lines in the chaos that shouldn't persist. A pattern that appears, holds, and then dissolves. Thruster corrections are too clean, I say before I can stop myself. Ruiz flicks her gaze toward me. Explain. I hesitate. In science, certainty is a luxury. The currents, they're organizing, not like normal convection. It's as if the station's corrections are being met, not resisted by random turbulence, but responded to. Park's laugh is sharp. You're anthropomorphizing weather. I shake my head. Not intention, feedback. Like a system stabilizing around a new object. Like fluid dynamics doing fluid dynamics. Park cuts in. Orpheus. Any anomalies in wind field. Coherence? Orpheus pauses. Wind field vectors showing localized alignment around station perimeter. Magnitude, statistically unusual. Park's mouth tightens. She doesn't apologize. She rarely does. Unusual doesn't mean impossible. No, Ruiz says quietly, but it means we watch it. The hull vibration shifts, not louder, different. The rhythm stutters once, as though something presses its ear to the metal and then pulls away. I look down at my hands. My coffee in the sealed mug trembles in tiny ripples. Approaching drill deployment depth, Orpheus says. Estimated time, 40 minutes. Hale sets his cables down and wipes his palms on his suit. And then we stick our spear into the storm. We insert a probe, Ruiz corrects. Call it whatever makes you sleep, Hale replies. It's still a spear. The drill assembly is housed in the lower bay, a cavernous section of the platform where the walls are lined with heaters and de-icing rails. The drill itself is a segmented cylinder of composite and superconductor coils, designed to resist pressure and chemical corrosion. Its tip surrounded by field projectors, meant to reduce friction through the dense atmosphere. The anomalous energy signal has been detected repeatedly at a consistent depth, like a pulse beneath layers of pressure. The readings are clean, too clean. They don't smear like natural noise. They don't drift. As we descend, the station's interior lighting warms by design, a psychological trick to fight the blue outside. The corridors smell of metal, ozone, and the dry tang of recycled air. When we pass the insulation seams, frost blooms like pale moss, delicate and deadly. Park joins me near the drill control panel. Ruiz remains at the navigation station. Hale straps into an access seat with the casualness of someone who has repaired things in worse places. Park's fingers dance over the controls. Ready to deploy. We begin with minimal penetration. We're not, she glances at Hale, stabbing anything. We're sampling. Everything is stabbing, Hale says. Ruiz's voice comes through the bay speakers. Proceed. Nolan, you're on recording duty. Note any fluctuations in the field. I'm always on recording duty, I say, but my throat feels tight. I bring up the storm vector display on my tablet. The alignment persists. Park initiates deployment. The drill bay shudders as the lower hatch irises open, revealing nothing but blue darkness and the occasional silent flash of lightning deep within. The drill assembly slides downward on magnetic rails, its tip disappearing into cloud like a needle into ink. For a few seconds, nothing changes. Then Orpheus speaks, and for the first time in the mission, there is a note of hesitation. External wind field reconfiguring, stabilization thrusters compensating, thrust vector adjustments, 14% above baseline. Ruiz's response is immediate. What changed? Orpheus. Drill deployment correlates with increased wind alignment. Currents are forming a shearing around the platform. Park's eyes gleam. That's it. That's the signal coupling. The energy anomaly is interacting with our field projectors. We're seeing response. A response, I repeat, and the whole vibration shifts again, syncing with the drill's descent rate, like a heartbeat matching another heartbeat. Hale leans forward in his harness. You guys see that? The lightning's bending. On the external feed, a lightning sheet forks, but instead of branching randomly, it arcs along a curved path that skirts the drill shaft. It avoids the drill like water flowing around a stone. Park inhales sharply. Field effect. It's polarizing the local atmosphere. Or the atmosphere is polarizing itself, I say. She looks at me now, annoyed. You're doing it again. Before I can reply, a warning chime pierces the bay. Pressure spike. Orpheus announces. Localized compression wave approaching from starboard. Ruiz's voice snaps through comms. Counter thrust. Stabilize now. The station tilts slightly, a slow rolling motion that makes my stomach lurch. In the view feed, the blue darkness thickens, as if the storm has turned its attention and leaned closer. Hale grips his harness. That's not a wave, he says. That's a wall. The pressure spike hits. The bay lights flicker. The hull screams. Not a sound, not exactly, but a trembling in the bones and teeth. Somewhere above us, metal groans as if being squeezed by a giant hand. Report! Ruiz barks. Stabilization thrusters at maximum, Orpheus says. Manual correction required. Ruiz swears, and the station's tilt becomes a controlled struggle. I can picture her hands on the thruster controls, forcing Helios 9 to fight an invisible force. Park stares at her display, jaw clenched. Drill integrity holding. Penetration depth, 60 meters. Abort deployment, Ruiz orders. Park's head snaps up. Commander, if we retract now, we lose the coupling data. We lose the station if we don't, Ruiz says. Retract. Park's fingers hover, resisting, then comply. The drill begins to rise. Outside, the lightning flares again. Not near the drill tip this time. Above it, around us. A crown of silent white branching in the blue, as if the storm is drawing a circle. The pressure spike eases, not gradually, but abruptly, like a decision made. The station steadies. In the sudden quiet, the low-frequency vibration in the hull changes rhythm one more time. It settles into a steady pulse. Orpheus speaks softly. Supply Module C reporting structural stress. Deformation increasing. Hale exhales. That module's on the external brace. I bring up its camera feed. The supply module, our spare parts and food reserve, hangs against the truss like a steel lung. Frost swirls around it, the storm wall shifts, and the module dents inward slightly, then more, as if unseen pressure fingers are testing it. Ruiz, I say, it's being compressed. Can you vent it? Reduce differential? She asks. Orpheus answers before Hale can. Negative. External compression exceeds material tolerance. For a moment, the module holds. Then it folds, not explodes, not shatters. It is crushed with slow certainty, its panels buckling inward until it resembles a clenched fist. The feed cuts as the camera fractures. Silence fills the bay. Park whispers, not to anyone in particular. That shouldn't happen. Not like that. Ruiz's voice returns, tight. We log it as environmental instability. We keep moving. We proceed with caution. I should have agreed. Instead, I stare at the empty blue beyond the hatch, and the thought arrives uninvited, cold and simple. It crushed the module the way a hand crushes an insect's shell, not out of anger, out of curiosity. Mission control, Ruiz says over comms. We've encountered abnormal pressure behavior. Request guidance. A pause. Then mission control's voice returns, clear, perfectly shaped, and utterly wrong. Helios 9, confirm abnormal pressure behavior. Request guidance. Ruiz freezes. That's what I just said. I glance at Park. Her face is pale. Mission control repeats again. Same cadence, same tone. Helios 9, confirm abnormal pressure behavior. Request guidance. Hale's voice drops to a whisper. That's an echo. Orpheus speaks with a new flatness. Orbital communications link has ceased. No carrier, no interference signature. Ruiz's fingers tap the console in a rapid, anxious rhythm. Then what are we hearing? Orpheus. A perfect replication of outgoing transmission. I feel the hair rise along my arms inside my suit. Outside, the storm wall shifts, and for a heartbeat the blue darkness seems to press closer to the hatch, listening. Ruiz says, very softly now, we're alone. The hull vibration continues its steady pulse, like something beneath the clouds has found our frequency. Ruiz orders a full comms sweep, and the station responds with the kind of efficiency that used to reassure me. Antenna arrays rotate. Tight beam transmitters cycle frequencies. Orpheus throws diagnostic patterns into the void, like stones into a well. Nothing comes back, not even static. It's worse than silence. Silence is nature. This is absence with edges. Try laser to relay boy, Park says, already moving toward the auxiliary panel. Her voice has a brittle brightness, like she can outtalk physics. If RF is being eaten, optical might thread through. Hale unstraps and floats toward the hatch control, glancing out into the blue as though expecting a face. And if the void is eating the light too? Then we document it, Ruiz says. And we keep the station alive. I keep my recorder running. My hands want something to do, so I start mapping the timeline. Drill deployment at T-39 minutes. Pressure spike at T-36. Supply module. Crushed at T-34. Orbital comms gone at T-32. A pattern forms in my head before I want it to. Action, response. Action, response. Not random, not weather. Park initiates the optical link. A thin red line appears on the external camera feed for an instant. A tight laser spear vanishing into blue haze. The beam should scatter, should flare, should bloom. Instead, it disappears like it's been cut off at the skin of the storm. Orpheus waits 1 beat longer than normal. No return acknowledgement. Beam absorption exceeds predicted atmospheric attenuation. Ruiz's mouth tightens. Absorption by what? Orpheus. Unknown, localized. Park turns toward me as if I'm the one who can translate that into something human. Localized means it's around us. Yes, I say. Only around us. Hale rubs his gloved thumb against his forefinger, a nervous habit. So we're in a bubble, a dead bubble. Ruiz nods once, as if she's chosen a shape for the problem. We operate like the bubble is permanent. Nolan, keep logging. Park, triage your science. Hale, I want a full structural scan of the truss after that compression event. Orpheus, run predictive models for pressure anomalies and give me worst-case scenarios. Worst-case scenarios are not productive, Park snaps automatically. Ruiz looks at her, not angry, just final. Worst case is what keeps people alive. Park closes her mouth. Her eyes flick to the drill control screen like it's a pet she left outside in the cold. I follow Ruiz into the central corridor. The station's spine feels different now. The ever-present hum of heaters has a faint hitch in it, as if the system is compensating for an appetite. Emergency seals remain open for now, but the frost on the seams is thicker. It crawls over the door frames in thin filigree. When I touch the bulkhead, my glove squeaks against cold metal. Orpheus, I say quietly. Define, localized in kilometers. Localized boundary radius approximately 3.8 kilometers centered on Helios 9, Orpheus replies. Boundary appears stable. I stop walking. So orbit can still talk to itself. Yes, but it can't talk to us. Yes, Ruiz hears it. She slows, turning her head slightly. So the blackout is shaped. Like a dome, Hale says from behind us, having caught up. Or like a net. Ruiz exhales through her nose. Okay, we're not panicking. We're not assuming intelligence. We're assuming physics we don't understand. Park appears at the junction, tablet hugged to her chest. Ruiz, we can't just shut down the drill and leave. The anomaly is still there. That pressure event was a reaction to our field projectors, not a message. Then it's a reaction we can't survive, Ruiz replies. Park's gaze sharpens. If we stop now, we go home with nothing but a crushed module and a ghost echo. This is a 1 billion credit mission. Ruiz steps closer, voice dropping so it becomes intimate, dangerous. This is a 4-person mission. I don't spend people for data. I feel the air between them harden like it can be snapped. Orpheus interrupts. New pressure gradient forming at lower habitat level. Temperature drop detected in corridor 3. Hale pivots instantly. That's near the supply crossway. If that corridor freezes... Go, Ruiz says. Hale, with me. Nolan, Park, check the heaters and seals. Orpheus, isolate the gradient. We split. Corridor 3 is narrower than the main spine, a maintenance passage threaded with coolant pipes and cable trays. The emergency lighting here is dimmer, a soft amber glow that makes the frost look like pale growth. Halfway down, my breath catches in my throat. The air has a taste now, metallic, sharp, ozone and something else, like wet stone. Park notices my pause. What? I don't know, I say. The air. A faint vibration runs through the floor. The hull pulse, steady as before, but now it seems closer, as if it has moved from the station's skin to its bones. We reach the heater junction. The panel display shows a drop in output, not a failure, a diversion. Power rerouting, Park mutters, fingers flying. Orpheus is sending current elsewhere. Elsewhere where? I ask. Park's jaw tightens. To stabilization thrusters, Ruiz is probably fighting another shear ring. I imagine the storm outside tightening its flow, forcing the station to burn power just to remain level. If we keep spending energy like that, our heaters will lose. In this environment, losing heat is losing corridors, losing air, losing time. Park opens the panel and exposes the conduit maze. Frost has formed inside, delicate crystals on the wiring insulation. That shouldn't happen. The panel is internal. Heat leak, she says, but her tone has less confidence. Or external cooling penetrating the insulation. Through solid metal, I say. She doesn't answer. She reroutes manually, hands steady but too fast. If we can stabilize the heater output, we can buy an hour, maybe 2. The station shudders, not like turbulence, like something pushing. The corridor lights flicker once. Then, for one long heartbeat, the emergency lights go out completely. Darkness inside Helios 9 is absolute. No windows here, no glow, no horizon, only the sound of breathing and the soft, steady pulse in the hull. In that blackout, I hear something else. Not a sound effect, not a noise that belongs to machinery, a pattern in the vibration, a subtle modulation, like the pulse is learning to speak. The lights return with a cough of current. Park's face is pale. Tell me you heard that. I heard the hull pulse change, I say. Park shakes her head as if the motion will dislodge fear. It's structural resonance. It's pressure doing things to our frame. Maybe, I say, and I hate how small it sounds. Orpheus speaks in our earpieces. Corridor 3 temperature stabilizing. Pressure gradient redirected. Redirected, like a hand moved it. Ruiz's voice cuts in, strained. All crew, brace. We're getting a second shear event, stronger. Orpheus predicts structural failure in external brace sections if this persists. Hale's voice overlaps. I'm seeing microfractures on the starboard truss. It's like something is squeezing and releasing repeatedly. Ruiz. Nolan. Park. Get to Central. Now. We move fast, boots catching on icy patches that weren't there earlier. The station feels smaller already, like it's contracting around us. In Central, Ruiz is strapped into the navigation seat, her knuckles white on the controls. The external feed shows a storm wall sliding past, an immense vertical curtain of blue-black cloud. Lightning crawls along it in thin, branching veins, not striking randomly, but tracing contours as if outlining an invisible structure. Orpheus, Ruiz snaps. Why is the wall holding formation? That's not fluid turbulence. Orpheus responds. Wind vectors exhibit coherent organization, storm wall movement synchronized with station stabilization corrections. Park stares at the screen. It's matching us. Hale pulls up the truss scan. Microfractures are increasing. If the starboard brace fails, we lose the drill bay alignment. Ruiz's eyes flick to Park. Status of drill? Park hesitates a fraction too long. Retracted, but the field projectors are still charged. Discharge them, Ruiz orders. Park opens her mouth, then closes it. She taps commands. Discharging. On the external feed, lightning flares again, an abrupt sheet that brightens the storm wall like a camera flash. For an instant, the cloud texture resolves into something that makes my stomach tighten. Filaments. Thin, branching lines within the storm itself, moving in coordinated arcs. They look like tendons in a muscle, or like nerves under skin. The image vanishes as quickly as it came, swallowed back into blue. Hail swallows. Did anyone else see? Yes, I say. Park's voice drops. That's not possible. Those are charged pathways. No, Ruiz says, and I can hear it in her tone. She wants the word to be true because it's safer. It's an artifact, camera saturation. But Orpheus speaks over her, calm as ever. Visual feed anomaly consistent across 3 external cameras. Object classification, filamentary structures. Movement pattern, directed. Ruiz's jaw flexes. Are they moving toward us, Orpheus? Affirmative. The station shudders again, more violently. A warning chime sounds, this one deeper, meant for catastrophic thresholds. Supply reserve levels recalculating, Orpheus says. Loss of Module C. Reduces emergency provisions by 26%. Current power expenditure will exhaust primary reactor margin in 17 hours if stabilization demands persist. 17 hours. On paper, we have days. On paper, we have redundancy. On paper, we have orbit. But paper doesn't live inside a storm that can shape silence into a dome. Ruiz takes one hand off the controls and looks at each of us in turn. We stop thinking like this is a mission. We start thinking like this is a sinking vessel. Hale's voice is rough. What's the first move? Ruiz's eyes flick to the external feed again, to the moving storm wall, to the invisible filaments behind it. We reduce our signature. We reduce thruster corrections. We go passive as long as we can. We conserve heat and power. Park shakes her head, almost pleading. Going passive means we sink. Ruiz meets her gaze. Then we choose where we sink, not the storm. I record her words because it feels like the point where the story changes shape. Outside, the storm wall slides closer, and the lightning begins to arc not across the clouds, but around us, as if tracing the boundary of that blackout dome. A ring, a circle, a containment. I realize, with sudden clarity, that the blackout isn't a side effect. It's the first tool. The station's hull pulse continues, steady and patient, like a heartbeat that does not belong to any of us. Ruiz's go passive order changes everything in ways that don't show up on any checklist. Helios 9 is designed to fight, to correct, to keep itself level against a world that has no ground. Every system assumes motion is the price of survival. But when we throttle down the stabilization thrusters, the station stops arguing with the atmosphere, and the atmosphere answers. The first thing we notice is the quiet, not true quiet. Helios 9 still breathes. Fans still move air through filters. Heaters still whisper through insulated vents. Orpheus still ticks through calculations like a clock that refuses to sleep. But the constant vibration of active correction fades, and in its place, the whole pulse becomes clearer, more intimate, like we've turned down the music and discovered a stranger was in the room the entire time. Orpheus speaks. Stabilization thrusters reduced to 30%, descent rate increasing by 0.7 meters per second. Ruiz keeps her hands, light on the controls, like she's holding a nervous animal. 0.7 is acceptable. Park's stare stays fixed on the depth indicator. Acceptable until it isn't. Hale straps into a seat near the maintenance access and pulls up structural stress overlays. Brace microfractures stabilizing. Less correction means less shear. That's good. Ruiz nods without relief. We buy time. I watch the external feed. Without the thrusters constantly fighting, the storm wall that had been sliding past us begins to drift differently, It doesn't slam into us. It doesn't crush us. It simply rotates, like a massive curtain being drawn into a new arrangement. The blackout dome remains. Orpheus pings, no carrier, no orbit. Just our own transmissions echoing back with perfect mimicry whenever we forget and try again. Park paces the narrow central corridor, her hands opening and closing as if she's kneading invisible clay. We're interpreting this as hunting, because it's easier than admitting we don't understand it. Ruiz doesn't look away from the displays. You saw the filaments. Charge pathways, Park insists, but the insistence is thinner now. Electrodynamic structures, ionized bands, they can form patterns. Hale snorts. Patterns that move toward us, Park spins on him. Yes, patterns that form where our heat and EM fields disturb the local environment. We're a candle in a room full of smoke. The smoke curls. That doesn't mean it wants the candle. I hear myself answer before I choose to. But the smoke doesn't normally build a wall. Park opens her mouth, then closes it. She looks at me, and for the first time there is fear in her eyes that isn't disguised as irritation. Orpheus interrupts. Thermal bloom detected along outer hull. Source: internal heater output radiating through stress points. Hale's fingers pause over his tablet. Stress points meaning cracks. Affirmative, Orpheus says. Microscopic fractures act as thermal leakage nodes. Ruiz's shoulders tighten. So the station is bleeding heat through its wounds. And the storm can see it, I add quietly. Park swallows. Everything has gradients. That doesn't mean see. But her voice doesn't have fight left in it. Ruiz turns her chair a fraction to face us. We're going to do something we should have done from the start. We're going to inventory what we can lose. No one answers. Ruiz continues anyway. We lost Module C. That's a quarter of our spares and provisions. We're burning power faster than planned because the atmosphere is forcing corrections. Our comms are gone. Our heaters are now also beacons. Hale's jaw clenches. If heaters go, we freeze. Ruiz nods. So we don't let heaters go. We cut everything else first. Park's eyes flash. Not the lab. Ruiz's stare is steady, almost kind. The lab is lights and consoles. The drill is coils and field projectors. We don't need either to breathe. Park looks like she's been slapped. We came here to return, Ruiz says. That's my mission now. The station drops another meter. A soft lurch. The depth indicator scrolls. Orpheus announces, approaching previous anomaly altitude. Energy signature increasing. Park's head snaps up. There, you hear it? The signal is back. Ruiz exhales. We are not drilling again. Park steps closer to the console, hands trembling just slightly. Commander, if the signal is tied to the blackout, then understanding it might be the only way out. Hale glances at me. Does understanding ever get you out? I don't answer because I'm thinking about the echo of Mission Control's voice, repeating Ruiz's words with perfect cadence. Not interference, a copy, a mirror. I feel it then, like a shift in the air, a subtle pressure, change that makes my ears pop. Orpheus. New pressure gradient forming. Location, aft corridor, near habitation module. Ruiz's voice hardens. That's where we sleep. Hale unstraps. I'll check it. Ruiz grabs his arm. No solo. Nolan, with him. My stomach knots, but I nod. Park follows without being asked, as if the idea of staying alone in Central is suddenly unbearable. We move down the aft corridor. The lighting here is dimmer, more emergency than normal, because Ruiz already ordered non-essential panels shut. The station's warmth is uneven now. Pockets of heat near vents, pockets of cold near seams where frost feathers outward in white veins. As we walk, the hull pulse changes rhythm. Not a dramatic shift, just enough to notice. It aligns with our footsteps. I stop. Hale stops too, immediately. Park frowns. What? Listen. Hale whispers. We stand in the corridor, silent. The pulse continues. 1, 2, 3. Park's eyes widen slowly. It's matching our movement. It's resonant feedback, she says reflexively, but her voice is failing her. Structural coupling with gate frequency. Hale takes one step forward. The pulse answers. A fraction later, a matching modulation runs through the floor like a reply. My throat goes dry. Orpheus, I say softly. Is the hull resonance responding to crew motion? Orpheus takes a beat. Correlation detected. Response latency, 0.4 seconds. Response, not coincidence. Hale exhales through his nose, a sound that isn't laughter. So the station is a drum, and something outside is listening to the beat. We reach the habitation junction. A seam along the bulkhead has frost thick enough to look like bone. The air is colder here, and the taste of ozone is sharper. Pressure breach? Hale asks. Park checks her tablet. No, not yet. Orpheus. Pressure gradient is external, compression increasing along after. Hull! Ruiz's voice comes through comms. Report! Hale looks at the frosted seam. Aft hull is being squeezed again, but slower, like it's controlled. Park's voice goes small. Controlled by what? I look at the seam and imagine a hand around the station's tail, testing, learning how much force causes what reaction. We need to move our sleeping quarters, Ruiz says over comms. Now, we can't stay in a section the storm is targeting. Park snaps back. It's not targeting. A deep tremor runs through the corridor, strong enough to shake loose a powder of frost that drifts like ash. Hale curses. That's targeting. We return towards Central, and the station's interior begins to change around us in a way that feels like a living thing deciding which limbs it can afford. Ruiz has Orpheus begin sealing off non-essential corridors to conserve heat. Bulkhead doors slide shut with heavy finality, locking with mechanical clunks that echo down the empty spaces. Emergency lights dim further in the abandoned sections, leaving them as blue-shadowed tunnels where frost can grow unchecked. The station is shrinking, not physically, operationally, habitably. Habitation will move to the lab bay, Ruiz declares. We'll sleep near the drill controls because it's insulated and has redundant heat. Park flinches as if the bay is sacred. You're turning my workspace into a bunk room. Ruiz's eyes are tired. You're welcome to keep it as a workspace if you can promise it won't be a coffin. Park says nothing. Hale drops into a seat, sweat beading at his temple despite the cold. We're sealing ourselves into a smaller and smaller box. Ruiz nods. That's what submarines do when they take damage. Compartmentalize. Survive. And if the storm keeps squeezing the compartments? Hale asks. Ruiz's gaze flicks to the depth indicator again. Then we keep moving the living space until we run out of station. I keep recording, but my mind is somewhere else. The hull pulse, the response latency, the way the pressure gradients appear, not where they are strongest, but where we are most vulnerable, and the sensation that Helios 9 is no longer just a platform in a storm. It's a signal source, a pattern maker, a creature's footprint in an ocean that never needed footprints until we arrived. Orpheus speaks quietly, almost conversationally. Energy signature increasing. Filamentary structures reappearing at 2 kilometers. Direction, convergent. Ruiz doesn't move for a second. Then she says, all crew, full suits. From now on, we treat every corridor as potentially lethal. Park whispers, barely audible. This isn't a storm. No one contradicts her. Outside, the external feed shows nothing but shifting blue. But lightning begins to arc in deliberate curves again, tracing the dome boundary like a bright chalk line. And deep within, that blue, a darker region rotates into view, an immense shadowed swirl that looks less like weather and more like a pupil turning toward light. The hull pulse steadies. It no longer matches our footsteps. It leads them. Ruiz insists on suits even inside the station now. At first it feels like theatre, like she's trying to impose discipline on fear. Then Orpheus reports a trace contamination in the air loop, ammonia levels rising in a way that doesn't match any known leak, and the suits stop being symbolic. Helios 9 becomes a place we visit, not a place we live. We sleep in the drill bay because it holds heat the best. 4 bunks unfolded from the wall like emergency coffins, strapped down so we don't drift into frost-rimed panels. The bay smells of polymer seals and cold metal. Even with heaters running, my visor fogs at the edges when I exhale. The station keeps sinking. Passive descent was supposed to buy time. Instead, it becomes a slow surrender. 0.7 meters per second becomes 1, then 1.2. The atmosphere thickens, and the station's buoyancy systems, never meant for this density, strain like lungs trying to pull air through water. Orpheus gives us numbers. Ruiz translates them into orders. Park turns them into theories. Hale turns them into fixes. I turn them into a confession I don't know who will ever hear. Depth approaching target anomaly layer, Orpheus announces. External pressure now exceeds design threshold by 6%. Ruiz doesn't flinch. Options. Orpheus. Option 1. Increase stabilization thrusters and buoyancy heaters to slow descent. Power consumption increases by 40%. Estimated primary reactor margin exhausted in 11 hours. Option 2, Ruiz says. Option 2. Maintain passive descent. Estimated structural failure probability increases exponentially beyond current depth. Projected time to critical hull deformation, 9 to 14 hours. Hale laughs once, short and humorless. So either we run out of power and freeze, or we get crushed and freeze. Park's voice is quiet. There's a third option. We go outside. Ruiz turns slowly toward her. Explain. Park brings up a schematic on her tablet and projects it onto the bay wall. The image wavers slightly because the station vibrates with that steady pulse. The starboard truss is developing fractures. The aft hull is being compressed selectively. If we reinforce the brace points and seal microfractures, we reduce thermal leakage nodes. We reduce our signature. Hale's eyes narrow. You want an EVA. It's not space, Park says, as if that makes it better. It's atmosphere, dense enough to provide some buoyant support. Dense enough to rip you off the hull, Hale replies. Ruiz's face stays still, but I see the calculation behind her eyes. Outside repairs are always the last resort. Outside repairs are also the only way to keep the station from becoming a shrinking tomb. Orpheus, Ruiz says. Feasibility. Orpheus pauses. External conditions, wind shear high, visibility low, filamentary structures present within 2 kilometers. Lightning activity elevated. EVA risk. Extreme. Hale lets out a slow breath. Extreme. That's Orpheus being polite. Park meets Ruiz's gaze. If we don't patch the truss, the next shear ring will snap it. Then we lose alignment, lose heaters, lose everything. Ruiz looks at me. Nolan. I swallow. She's asking, not as commander, but as someone who wants another mind to share the weight. If the storm is using our heat leaks and corrections to track us, I say, then sealing cracks and reducing thrust might make us less visible. But going outside might also teach it. Park's lips press tight. We can't live by refusing to move because something might learn. That's exactly how you die in here, Hale mutters. Ruiz raises a hand. Enough. Hale, you're our EVA lead. Nolan, you're tether and comms. Park, you're on internal control and patch instructions. Orpheus, you will not sugarcoat any hazard. Understood, Orpheus says. We prep in silence that isn't really silence. The hull pulse is constant. The station's vibration feels like a presence, like a giant machine running in a room below us. Suits seal with soft mechanical clicks. Tethers spool out from wall mounts. Patch kits are checked and rechecked. Quick cure composites, micro weld injectors, Thermal seal wraps. Ruiz watches from the hatch console. Her faceplate reflects the blue outside. In and out, she says. No heroics. If you feel shear increasing, you retreat. Hale's eyes are steady behind his visor. Copy. The external access hatch opens. A wall of blue darkness fills the frame, not empty, but crowded with motion. The atmosphere outside is thick, almost liquid, swirling with suspended crystals that catch faint light and turn it into a shifting haze. Lightning flashes in distant curtains, illuminating storm walls like towering cliffs. There is no sky, no up, no down, only depth. Hale goes first, moving with practiced care. His boots magnetize to the hull rails. The tether line unfurls behind him like a lifeline to a world that is shrinking inside metal. I follow, my own boots clamping onto the rail. The cold outside is not just temperature. It's a pressure that tries to find seams in the suit, a chemical hunger pressing against the visor. Comms check, I say. Park's voice comes through, filtered. Loud and clear. Hale, your patch target is 2 meters forward, starboard brace junction. Nolan, your anchor and support. Ruiz adds, I'm monitoring shear. Orpheus is feeding me vector changes. The station's hull beneath my boots vibrates with that steady pulse. Out here, it feels stronger, like it's coming from the storm itself rather than the metal. Hale reaches the brace junction. Up close, the truss looks bruised. Microfractures spiderwebbing along a reinforced strut. Frost blooming from tiny cracks like breath from a wounded lung. He places a sensor patch. Crack depth? Orpheus answers directly into our suit audio. Fracture depth 2.3 millimeters. Propagation rate increasing. External compression wave frequency 6.1 cycles per minute. Hale's voice is tight. 6 cycles per minute. That's rhythmic. I look into the blue haze beyond him. Lightning flashes. For an instant, filaments appear, pale threads moving through the clouds, curving around us in slow arcs. They're not random, they're arranged, like a net settling. Hale, I say, unable to keep it out of my voice. We have filament movement. 2 o'clock. He glances, then keeps working. I see it. Park's voice sharpens. Ignore the scenery. Patch now. Hale injects micro-weld composite into the crack line. The material spreads and hardens, sealing the fracture like scar tissue forming under our hands. As he works, the storm around us shifts. Not a gust, not turbulence. A reorientation. The suspended crystals begin to move in one direction, forming a faint stream. My suit sensors register a subtle pressure difference across my shoulders. Ruiz's voice snaps in. Shear increasing. Hale, Nolan, you need to return. 2 more minutes, Hale says. Now, Ruiz insists. Hale finishes the weld, slaps thermal seal wrap over it, and starts back along the rail. That's when the lightning changes. A strike arcs from the storm wall, but it doesn't lash randomly. It bends. It curves toward the station and then splits, crawling along the hull like fingers testing a surface. My suit alarms chirp. Electromagnetic spike. The filaments in the haze seem to brighten, as if energized by the strike, and for a moment I see their true scale. They aren't thin threads. They are kilometer-long structures, braided through the storm like tendons in a living body. And they are moving toward us. Hale's tether jerks hard. He grunts. Something pulled. It. I feel my own line tighten. Not from station motion, from external force, like the storm has taken hold of our lifelines and is measuring their strength. Retract, Ruiz orders. Hale shoves forward, boots scraping along the rail. I follow, heart hammering inside the suit, breath loud in my own ears. The blue haze thickens, visibility collapsing into a shifting wall. For an instant I can't see the hatch, then lightning flashes again, and the station appears, dark metal against blue, small and fragile. Between us and the hatch, a filament drifts past. Up close, it isn't light, it's structure. a semi-transparent band of ionized material, rippling with internal current. It brushes the hull, and the hull pulse shifts, responding like an instrument touched. My suit registers a temperature spike. Not outside, inside my glove, as if the filament's proximity has induced current through the suit's conductive layers. A sensation crawls up my arm, warmth that isn't mine, a pressure that feels like a tension. I jerk my hand away from the hull rail, but the magnetic boot holds me steady. My glove trembles. "Hail," I say, voice strained. "Don't touch the..." Another lightning arc crawls along the hull. The filament near my hand brightens again. The station's hull pulse changes rhythm, and for a second it matches my heartbeat so closely I feel nauseated. Park's voice breaks through, suddenly frightened. "Nolan, your suit telemetry just spiked. What happened?" "I don't know," I whisper. "It's coupling." Ruiz's voice is hard. "Get inside, now." We reach the hatch. Hale practically throws himself through it. I follow, pulling tether lines with numb fingers, terrified that something in the storm will decide to keep them. The hatch seals. The moment it locks, the station shudders, as if something outside has pressed against it. Not a collision, a pressure embrace. Orpheus announces, "External. Filamentary structures converging on Helios 9. Lightning activity redirecting. Storm wall formation increasing." Hale rips off his helmet seal enough to gulp recycled air inside the bay. His face is slick with sweat. "It grabbed the tether. It grabbed it like it knew what it was." Park stares at the suit telemetry. "Your glove temp rose 10 degrees in under 2 seconds, she says to me. "That's not ambient. That's induced heating." Ruiz's voice is low. "It learned our lines are important." The hull pulse continues, steady, patient. Not matching footsteps now, not matching heartbeats. Setting a tempo. Outside, the storm walls move around the station like living structures, and lightning begins to strike in patterns that look less like weather and more like computation. I realize, with a cold clarity, that our EVA did not hide us. It introduced us. After the EVA, Helios 9 stops feeling like a station. It feels like bait. The patched brace holds. The microfractures seal. Thermal leakage drops by measurable degrees. For 6 precious minutes, the power draw stabilizes, and I can almost pretend we have regained control. Then the storm adapts. Not gradually, not over hours, over minutes. The first sign is heat. Orpheus reports it like any other variable. External temperature increasing along starboard hull. Park looks up sharply from her console. "Increasing? That's not possible." Hale finishes, voice raw. "We're sinking into colder layers." The external feed shows nothing but blue haze and intermittent lightning. Yet the thermal overlay paints a spreading bloom of warmth along the exact truss junction Hale welded. A hotspot, a mark. Ruiz's eyes narrow. "It's heating the patch." Park's voice tightens. "It can't selectively heat a composite weld through kilometers of storm." "Then why is it doing exactly that?" Ruiz asks. Orpheus continues. "Thermal bloom is not uniform. Pattern exhibits concentric gradients." Concentric. Rings. Hale leans closer to the display, like it's tracing the repair, like it is reading the scar. I feel a sudden heaviness in my gut, a memory of my glove warming under the filament's brush. Coupling, induction, attention. Park's fingers fly across diagnostics. "Orpheus, analyze the frequency spectrum of the hotspot. Is it EM, chemical, friction?" Orpheus replies, and for the first time its voice contains something I can only describe as constraint. Spectrum indicates electromagnetic induction consistent with field interaction. Source is external, origin unknown. Ruiz's gaze shifts to the drill controls. "Shut down all field emitters. Everything, even passive coils." Park hesitates, then executes the command. Field projectors offline, coils discharging. The hull pulse changes, immediately, as if it noticed the quieting of our own electricity. The thermal bloom does not fade. Instead, it spreads to the next junction, then the next, stepping along the truss like a finger tapping nodes in sequence. Hale whispers, "It's mapping the structure." Ruiz's jaw works. "Orpheus, can it see our layout?" Orpheus pauses. It can infer structural topology by analyzing thermal emissions, electromagnetic fields, pressure response, and vibration modes. Park snaps, "That's speculation." Orpheus answers, "That is predictive modeling based on observed behavior." Hale lets out a low breath. "So the storm is doing reverse engineering." Ruiz's voice goes flat. "Then we stop giving it data." She begins issuing orders, like cutting wires. Non-essential systems go dark, external lights off, lab instruments offline, diagnostic sweeps reduced. Even interior environmental feedback loops are throttled to minimize emissions. Helios 9 dims into a colder, quieter version of itself. And the storm presses closer. The blackout dome boundary tightens. Orpheus reports the radius shrinking from 3.8 kilometers to 3.1. The dome doesn't drift, it contracts. The echo of our own transmissions returns whenever any of us speak too loudly into the comms channel, as though the storm has begun to mirror not just signals, but habits. The first time Ruiz mutters a curse under her breath, it comes back to us a second later, perfectly duplicated, spoken in her own voice. We all freeze. Park's eyes widen. That wasn't routed through Orpheus. Orpheus confirms. No internal audio loop detected. Source is external replication. Hale's voice drops to a whisper. It's listening. Ruiz stares at the comm panel like it has betrayed her. Then she reaches over and disables open mic. From now on, no one speaks on comms unless necessary. Internal channel only. We start using hand signals in the corridors like divers. But even then, I catch myself glancing at the bulkheads, half expecting them to answer. The station continues sinking. Depth ticks upward with an inevitability that makes my teeth ache. Orpheus. External pressure now exceeds design threshold by 12%. Hull deformation within tolerances but increasing. Ruiz asks, "Time to failure?" Orpheus pauses. That hesitation again. Projected time to critical deformation, 7 to 10 hours. Park looks at the numbers and then at Ruiz. "We can't just sit and freeze." "No," Ruiz agrees. "We're going to move." Hale frowns. "Move where?" Ruiz points upward on the depth schematic, toward thinner atmosphere. "We create an ascent window. We use power in one controlled burst instead of bleeding it out." Park's eyes flare. "An ascent burn? With what? Thrusters can't punch through these shear rings." Ruiz's voice is low, steady. "Then we change the storm." Silence fills the drill bay. Hale says slowly, "You want to disrupt it." Ruiz nods once. "We have one weapon, energy. If the storm is organized, it relies on stability. We can't outmuscle it, but we might be able to force a temporary corridor." Park's breathing quickens. "You're talking about venting the reactor." Ruiz meets her gaze. "I'm talking about a controlled detonation, a shockwave, a heat plume, something big enough to break the coherence of the walls long enough for an ascent pod to reach orbit." My mouth goes dry. "That would kill the station." "It would," Ruiz says, "but the station is dying anyway." Hale shifts uncomfortably. "There are ascent pods. 2 operational, 1 damaged. They're rated for pressure, but not for a storm that can squeeze." Ruiz says, "We only need 1 corridor, 1 clear line. Once a pod is above the blackout dome, it can re-establish comms with orbit and call rescue." Park's voice cracks with sudden emotion. "Or it can leave the rest of us behind." Ruiz doesn't deny it. "That's why we plan for all of us to go." Park laughs bitterly. "Plan? Like the storm cares about our plans." Orpheus speaks, and the sound stops us cold. "Commander Ruiz, new observation. Ruiz's head snaps toward the AI console. Go, Orpheus. The storm's adaptive behavior is increasing. Correlation between crew movement patterns and subsequent pressure gradients is strengthening. It is not only mapping the station, it is mapping you. Hale's face tightens. It's watching where we go. Orpheus continues. I have analyzed 512 instances of corridor traversal. After repeated use of specific routes, pressure gradients formed adjacent to those routes. After relocation of habitation to the drill bay, aft compression ceased and starboard compression increased. Park whispers, it followed us. Ruiz's eyes are hard. It anticipates us. Orpheus adds, it may be learning to predict future actions by evaluating behavioral regularities. I feel a chill that has nothing to do with temperature. Orpheus, are you saying it's studying our decisions? A pause. Then, yes. Hale rubs his hands together inside his gloves. So, every time we adapt, it gets smarter. Park looks like she's about to argue, but her voice fails her. Ruiz's gaze shifts to me. Nolan, your log. What's your read? I swallow. I think of the hull pulse leading our footsteps. I think of my glove warming as if touched by thought. I think of the blackout dome tightening like a noose. It doesn't want us dead immediately, I say slowly. If it did, the module crush would have been the end. It's testing limits, learning what breaks us, learning what we do when we're afraid. Ruiz nods once, grim. Then we stop being a lesson. Hale says, how? We can't stop moving. Ruiz points to the drill assembly schematic. We give it a final lesson, one it can't adapt to in time. Park's eyes fill with a fevered brightness that scares me more than her earlier obsession. Reactor venting could create a thermal plume that disrupts the storm's coherence. It might also fry the filaments. Or it might feed it, Hale warns. Ruiz doesn't blink. We don't have the luxury of safe. Orpheus speaks again, quieter. Additional note, external filamentary structures are repositioning in response to our power changes. They are forming a lattice around the station. A lattice, Park repeats, voice thin. Like a cage. Hale's jaw clenches. It's building a trap. I look at the external feed. The lightning no longer strikes across broad curtains. It travels in arcs that connect points, like lines drawn between nodes, a geometry of light. Ruiz says, we have to move before the cage closes. Park stares at the reactor vent, protocol, her hands trembling as she scrolls. If we do this, there's no coming back. Ruiz replies, there's no going back now anyway. I keep recording, and I realize something that makes my skin prickle. Orpheus is not afraid. It does not have fear chemicals. It does not sweat. It does not imagine pain. Yet its pauses have grown longer. Its voice has become more careful. It is modeling something beyond the storm now. Something about us. Maybe the only way a machine learns fear is by watching what fear does to the creatures who built it. And outside, in the endless blue, the storm keeps tightening its lattice, patient as a mind that has all the time in the world. Ruiz sets the reactor vent plan like a knife on the table, sharp, dangerous, and suddenly the only thing anyone can see. We work in the drill bay because it has the hard lines to the reactor control trunk. Orpheus overlays schematics on the wall, vent ports, fail-safe seals, detonation radii. The station's lights are dim now, narrowed to strips along the floor and red status indicators on consoles. Everything else is dark to save power and reduce emissions. We look like ghosts inside our own machine. Timeline, Ruiz says. Her voice has a steadiness that feels borrowed. We prep the ascent pod. We rig the vent charges. We wait for a shear lull, then vent and ignite to create an upward corridor. We launch immediately. Park swallows, eyes fixed on the protocol. Ignite with what? We can't use the main reactor once it's vented. Hale points at the schematic. We can use the drill coils as an igniter, dump residual into the plume, a spark on a flood. Park's lips twitch. A spark in Uranus. Ruiz looks at me. Nolan, I want you in the pod. The words land like a physical hit. Hale turns sharply. Commander! Ruiz raises a hand. Listen, Nolan is the mission recorder. If anyone gets out, it should be the one carrying the log and telemetry. That's not favoritism, that's function. Park's voice cracks. So the rest of us are expendable? Ruiz's stare doesn't soften. No, the plan is for all of us. But if something goes wrong, we don't lose everything. I feel my chest tighten. I want to argue. I also understand. The part of me that measures probabilities knows she's right. The human part hates her for it. Orpheus interrupts. Commander Ruiz, behavioral prediction anomaly detected. Ruiz doesn't look away from the plan. Explain. Orpheus. External pressure gradients are forming in patterns consistent with anticipated crew routes. Example. Corridor 2 pressure increase. Corresponds to typical path from drill bay to pod bay. Hale's face goes hard. We haven't even moved yet, Park whispers. It's guessing. Orpheus confirms. Yes. A cold spreads through my stomach. It's predicting our plan. Ruiz's jaw flexes. How accurate? Orpheus pauses. Probability of correct anticipation increasing. Current match rate between predicted and observed crew movement, 71%. 71. That number is not a weather statistic. That number is a mind learning. Ruiz turns to us. We change our behavior immediately. Randomize routes, no direct paths. Hale, you and Nolan take separate corridors and meet at junctions. Park, you stay central and work remotely as much as possible. Park's eyes flick to the reactor console. Remote won't work for the manual override. Ruiz nods. Then we do it last. The station shudders. A slow squeeze followed by release. The hull pulse continues beneath it, steady, patient. Hale mutters, it's not just guessing, it's training. We move like that for the next hour. Detours, pauses, false starts. We walk 2 corridors to reach a panel 1 corridor away. We backtrack. We stop mid-haul and stand still until the pressure gradients shift. It's absurd, like playing hide and seek with an ocean. But the gradients keep appearing. Not always where we go, sometimes where we almost go. At one point, Hale and I approach the pod bay corridor. The air tastes sharper there, ammonia biting through suit filters. A faint vibration runs through the floor, different from the hull pulse. A tightening sensation in my sinuses. Orpheus speaks in my ear. Warning, external compression increasing along pod bay access. Hale stops, raising a hand. We turn around. We do. As we retreat, a deep tremor travels through the corridor behind us, and the bulkhead seam near the pod bay frosts over in seconds, white crystals blooming like rapid mold. The pressure there climbs fast enough to make my ears ache even through the suit compensation. Hale whispers, it was waiting. We take the longer route. By the time we reach the pod bay from another angle, the pressure gradient has moved. Not dissipated, moved. Like a spotlight tracking us. Ruiz's voice comes through internal channel. Status, Hale answers. Pod bay access is being squeezed intermittently. It's forming traps. Ruiz, copy. Do not enter unless I authorize. Park's voice cuts in, tight. We have to enter. The pod needs manual prep. Ruiz replies, we will, when we're ready to launch, not before. Park's breathing is audible in the channel. If we wait, it will close it completely. Ruiz doesn't answer immediately. Then, that's why we make it think we're not going there. I feel a flash of something like admiration. Not for her calm, for her willingness to think like prey. We continue prepping in fragments. Hale rigs the pod's pressure seals and checks the launch clamps. I prepare the telemetry dump, a hardened module that contains Orpheus logs, my recordings, sensor streams. Park configures the vent sequence. her fingers trembling as she types the steps that will kill our only stable power source. "All vent charges armed," she says finally, voice hollow. "Fail-safes will resist. We'll have to override in person." Ruiz nods. We do override at the last possible second. Then we run. Hale laughs without humor. "Run where? There's no where." Ruiz looks at the pod bay schematic. "Up." Orpheus speaks again. "External filamentary lattice tightening. Dome radius now 2.4 kilometers. The noose is closing." I check the external feed. Lightning arcs in straight lines now, not branching, connecting points in a web. The filaments themselves are visible more often, semi-transparent bands moving around the station like slow snakes. They do not strike the hull. They do not lash. They hover near key structural points: the pod bay, the drill bay, the reactor vent ports. They have learned our anatomy. Park's voice is small. "They're at the vent ports." Ruiz's eyes narrow. "How close?" Orpheus. "Within 50 meters of Port Cluster 1. Movement speed increasing when station power draw increases." Hale swears. "So if we start venting, they're already there." Park's shoulders slump. "Then the plume won't disrupt them. It'll ignite right in their lattice." Ruiz's stare goes distant for a second, as if she is seeing the whole storm as a single organism. Then she says, "Maybe that's exactly what we need." Park looks at her. "What?" Ruiz. "If the lattice is part of how it organizes, if it's the structure that makes the storm coherent, then igniting inside it might tear it apart, not push it aside, break it." Hale shakes his head. "Or it might just absorb it." Ruiz nods once. "Yes." The word hangs there like a verdict. Orpheus adds, "Probability analysis. Vent detonation may create temporary reduction in local storm coherence for 3 to 6 minutes. Confidence level low." Park laughs bitterly. "Low confidence. Great." Ruiz's gaze hardens. "We don't need high confidence. We need a window." We prepare the pod bay run. Ruiz orders one final behavioral randomization. We will do 3 fake routes. We will move toward the aft corridor, then toward the lab, then toward the storage junction, each time making enough noise and power draw to draw the gradients. Then, at the moment the gradients shift away, we sprint for the pod bay and execute the manual override. It's a plan built on the assumption that the storm can be fooled. But Orpheus's 71% match rate sits in my mind like a weight. If it's predicting us, our attempts at randomness might be just another data set. We begin the fake routes. The first, aft corridor. As we move, Orpheus reports pressure increase behind us. The storm follows. We stop. We backtrack. The gradient adjusts. It tracks. Second, lab corridor. Same result. The spotlight moves. Third, storage junction. This time, something different happens. We reach the junction, and the corridor ahead, one we do not intend to enter, suddenly seals itself with frost and pressure. A trap forming where we were not going. Park's voice trembles. "It's not just reacting, it's testing possibilities." Hale's voice is low. "It's running simulations." Ruiz's reply is a whisper. "Then our next move has to be something it can't simulate in time." She looks at me through her visor. "Nolan, when I say go, you run for the pod bay, no hesitation." My heart thuds. The hull pulse matches it for a second, then leads it, like a conductor setting tempo. Ruiz raises her hand. We stand in dim light, suited and tetherless, surrounded by corridors that are gradually becoming sealed tombs. Outside, the filament lattice tightens around the station's critical points, and lightning draws geometry in the blue. Somewhere in that pressure ocean, something is guessing our future. Ruiz drops her hand. "Go!" We run, not like heroes, like people trying to outrun a closing door. Helios 9's corridors were never meant for sprinting in pressurized suits. Every step is heavy, boots striking gridded floor panels that vibrate with the hull pulse. Emergency lighting turns the passage into a tunnel of amber and shadow. Frost feathers off the seams as we pass, stirred by our movement. Orpheus counts in my ear. Time to predicted compression onset at pod bay access, 37 seconds. Ruiz is behind us, pushing pace without wasting breath on encouragement. Hale moves like a machine, efficient and brutal, one hand on the wall to steady himself when the station shudders. Park's breathing is the loudest sound in the corridor. She keeps up, but her hands are tight, clutching the manual override tool like it's a weapon. We reach the pod bay junction. The air changes immediately. Pressure in my sinuses, a subtle squeeze around my visor, a cold taste of ammonia stronger than before, as if the station has exhaled something alien. The pod bay door is ahead, a heavy bulkhead with mechanical locks and a status panel. Beyond it are the ascent pods, our only way out, and the launch clamps that will either release us or crush us. Override station side seal, Ruiz orders. Park slams the tool into the panel port and begins the manual sequence, fingers moving fast despite suit gloves. Hale braces near the door seam, scanning his tablet. Compression gradient rising. It's coming fast. I grip the telemetry module to my chest as if it's fragile flesh. Orpheus speaks, the voice flat but urgent. External pressure field is aligning with pod bay axis. Predicted gradient peak in 21 seconds. Ruiz's tone is razor-edged. Park. Almost, Park snaps. Failsafe is resisting. It's reading external pressure as a breach condition. Hale barks. Then force it. Park's hands shake as she overrides the override, stripping away safety, layers one by one. I watch the status panel flicker from green to yellow to red, like a heartbeat failing. The hull pulse shifts. It doesn't just continue, it accelerates slightly as if anticipating impact. Door cycling, Park says. The pod bay bulkhead unlocks with a heavy clunk. It slides open. Cold rolls out like breath from a freezer. The pod bay is larger, lined with rails and clamps. 2 ascent pods sit in their cradles, matte black shells with small viewports. A third pod sits farther back, half disassembled, a corpse of metal and wiring. For a heartbeat, it looks like salvation. Then the bay shudders. Not the station, the bay itself, as if the storm has singled it out and tightened its grip. Orpheus announces, compression onset, pressure increasing along pod bay hull, rate extreme. Ruiz shouts, inside, now! We surge into the pod bay. Hale moves toward pod 1, the most intact. Ruiz heads for pod 2. Park veers toward the launch clamp. Control panel, because someone has to release the locks. I follow Ruiz toward pod 2 with the telemetry module, because she told me earlier, if anyone gets out, it's the log. The floor vibrates underfoot, and the bay lights flicker as power reroutes to structural integrity systems. Clamps, Ruiz calls. Park, release clamps. Park's voice comes back strained. The clamp system is locked. External pressure safety. Hale slams his fist into a manual release lever near pod 1. The lever doesn't budge. He swears, grabs a wrench from the wall kit, and strikes the release housing hard enough to jar my teeth. The housing dents. The lever still won't move. Orpheus. Compression increasing. Hull deformation in pod bay now at 24% of critical threshold. Ruiz's voice drops lower, controlled. It's turning the pod bay into a pressure trap. Park whirls, eyes wild. It knows this is where we'll go. Hale growls. We told it. The filaments outside the station make themselves known not through sight, but through sensation. A high tension in the air, a faint static crawling across my suit. The overhead lighting arcs briefly, a tiny electric thread that snaps and dies. Lightning is touching us through the hull. Orpheus. External filamentary structures have reached pod bay hull. Electromagnetic induction increasing. Park whispers, They're on top of us. Ruiz turns to me, grabbing my arm. Nolan, pod 2, get it powered. I nod and scramble up the pod ladder. The hatch seal is rimmed with frost. I slam my gloved palm against the keypad. The pod's internal systems awaken with a dim blue glow. Inside, the pod is cramped. 2 seats, harnesses, control sticks, minimal displays. It smells like plastic and old lubricant. The air inside is recycled, but cleaner than the station's. Ruiz follows me in. She locks the hatch behind her, not sealing fully yet, leaving a sliver open so Park and Hale can hear. Park! She shouts. Status! Park's answer is broken by a deep tremor. Clamp controls are frozen, literally. The actuator lines are icing. The heaters aren't keeping up. Hale yells from across the bay. I can cut the clamp lines, but it'll take time. Orpheus. Time to critical deformation. 4 minutes at current rate. 4 minutes. My mind tries to reject the number. It's too short to be real. Too close. Ruiz looks at me inside the pod, visor reflecting the dim displays. We may not all go. My chest tightens. Commander, she cuts me off. Listen, if the bay collapses, nothing launches. Not one pod. So we do the brutal thing. Outside the pod, Hale's voice booms. Ruiz, I can free pod 1 manually. Maybe. But only one. The bay's twisting. Park's voice is thin with panic. If you cut the clamp lines, you risk destabilizing the whole rack. It could jam both pods. Hale replies. Better. 1 than 0. Ruiz's eyes meet mine. Pod 1 is closer to the manual releases. Hale's on it. Pod 2 might become unusable if the bay warps. I need you in pod 1. I stare at her. I said the log matters, she says. I'm still saying it. But Hale is outside. Park is outside. I can't abandon them without trying to get at least one out. A shudder rattles the pod. A metallic groan travels through the bay like a giant bending a beam. Orpheus. Hull deformation now at 39% of critical threshold. Ruiz opens the hatch fully and shoves me toward the bay. Go, now. I climb down, my boots hitting the bay floor hard. It feels like stepping onto a sinking deck. Hale is at pod 1, sweat visible inside his helmet. He has the clamp housing open and is sawing through a thick composite line with a powered cutter. Sparks spit, swallowed instantly by the cold air. Almost, he grunts. Almost. Park stands at the control panel, hands trembling over frozen actuators. Her tablet shows error after error. She looks up at me, and in her eyes, I see the moment she understands this is not a solvable puzzle. The bay trembles again. A loud crack echoes through the metal as a support beam shifts. Frost rains from the ceiling. Orpheus. Pressure spike. External compression waves synchronized with crew position in pod bay. Synchronized. The storm is not squeezing randomly. It's timing the squeeze. It squeezes when we are here. Ruiz's voice comes over suit channel, low and sharp. Hale, Nolan, get in pod 1 as soon as it's free. Park, you're with me in pod 2. We'll attempt secondary release, but if we fail... Park cuts in, voice breaking. No! Ruiz ignores it. If we fail, you launch. Do you understand? Hale roars. Line cut! He yanks the severed composite free and throws it aside. The pod shifts in its cradle with a heavy clunk. Manual release lever, he shouts. I grab the lever and pull. It resists, then gives with a violent jerk. The pod's clamps retract with a grinding scream, metal against metal. Pod 1 loosens. For the first time, escape feels physically possible. Then the storm answers. A deep pressure surge slams into the pod bay. The entire bay compresses by a fraction, enough to send a shock through my knees. Lights explode overhead, plunging the bay into emergency red. Orpheus. Critical deformation imminent. Pod bay structural failure predicted in 90 seconds. Ruiz shouts, Launch pod 1! Hale and I scramble into pod 1. I strap in, hands shaking as I plug the telemetry module into the pod's data port. Hale slams the hatch, sealing it. Through the small viewport, I see Ruiz grabbing Park and dragging her toward Pod 2. Park stumbles, resisting, tears floating inside her helmet. The bay groans. The storm's pressure tightens. And in the vibration of the pod's hull, I feel the low-frequency pulse shift again, as if the storm has leaned close to our tiny shell and listened to the new rhythm of our fear. Hale's voice is harsh in the pod comms. Ignition, now. I look at the launch control. My finger hovers. Outside, the bay is collapsing. Ruiz is still moving, and the storm is squeezing with deliberate patience. I press launch. The ascent pod shudders as the launch clamps release completely. For a fraction of a second, nothing happens. The pod hangs in the bay cradle like a thought that hasn't decided to become action. Then the thrusters ignite. Not with a roar I can hear in vacuum, but with a deep vibration that travels through the pod's frame and into my teeth. The pod lurches forward, nose angling upward toward the bay's exit hatch. Hale's hands are locked on the controls, knuckles white under suit gloves. Trajectory locked, Orpheus announces from the pod's stripped-down guidance module. Not the full station AI, just a compact derivative package loaded into the pod for autopilot. Its voice is the same, but thinner, less present, like a memory. Ascent vector, 32 degrees to vertical, estimated time to dome boundary, 2 minutes, 40 seconds. 2 minutes. It sounds survivable. It sounds like a number you can hold. Through the viewport, I see the pod bay receding, bathed in emergency red. Ruiz and Park are a smear of motion near Pod 2. The bay ceiling has begun to buckle inward, metal bending as if pressed by an invisible hand. Hale pushes the pod toward the outer hatch. The exit iris is already cycling open, driven by station emergency logic. In catastrophic deformation, launch anything that can move. As the iris opens, blue darkness floods the frame. The pod slips out into Uranus's storm, and the world becomes motion. Visibility drops instantly. The pod's external cameras feed us a shifting haze of blue-black cloud and suspended crystals. Lightning flashes in distant sheets, but the flashes seem guided now, arcing along lines that feel too straight, too purposeful. The pod's inertial dampers struggle. My stomach tries to crawl up into my throat. Hale's voice is a tight hiss. Hold together. Hold together. I grip the seat harness so hard my fingers ache. The telemetry module is latched into the pod's port, its indicator light. Steady. The log is here. Whatever happens, the record exists. The pod climbs. Depth indicator on the pod, HUD, ticks downward, showing we are moving toward thinner layers. External pressure drops by small increments. The pod's skin creaks as the force on it changes. For a moment, it feels like we're winning. Then the storm shifts. A wall forms ahead. Not a visible wall, not a cloud bank you can see and avoid. A pressure boundary. A sudden, blunt resistance that slams into the pod's nose like hitting water at speed. The pod jolts. Hale curses, fighting the controls. "What is that?" Orpheus replies. "Pressure gradient detected above ascent vector. Gradient is coherent. Formation time. Rapid. Coherent. Formed. Not encountered." Hale attempts to adjust trajectory, pushing a few degrees starboard. The pod responds, but the resistance moves with us, sliding like a shield. The gradient is tracking the pod's movement. "It's shaping the corridor," I whisper. Hale's jaw clenches. "No, it's closing it." The pod shudders again as turbulence grabs the hull. The external cameras show filaments moving through the haze, brighter now, closer. They arc around the pod like slow whips, not striking but positioning. Lightning crawls along those filaments, redirected, controlled. Orpheus. Filamentary structures in proximity. Electromagnetic induction increasing. Systems risk, high. The pod's display flickers. A brief static ripple runs across the HUD. For half a second, the altitude numbers repeat twice, as if the system is stuttering. Then they stabilize. I remember Mission Control's echo, repeating Ruiz's words with perfect cadence. Mirror behavior. Replication. Hale speaks through clenched teeth. We need the detonation. Ruiz needs to vent. My throat tightens. We left before the vent. We had to, he snaps. If we waited, the bay would have crushed us. I look back through the rear camera feed. Helios 9 is a dark shape in the blue, barely visible through haze. Lightning flares around it in a web. The blackout dome boundary is faintly visible as a distortion in the cloud, like heat shimmer. Then the station flashes. A pulse of light blooms from its belly, bright enough to cut through the storm. The reactor vent detonation. It expands as a glowing plume, a violent bloom of heat and gas punching outward into the storm. For an instant, the filaments near Helios 9 flare white, like nerves shocked. The storm around the station convulses. The coherent wall ahead of us falters. Hale shouts, "There! Corridor!" The pressure gradient in front of the pod breaks into ragged turbulence. The resistance drops, and the pod surges upward, thrusters straining. The HUD altitude numbers begin to fall faster. We're climbing. For seconds, the external feed changes. The blue haze thins. The lightning grows more distant. A darker void appears above, not black vacuum yet, but a higher layer where the storms are less dense, less organized. It looks like a wound in the storm. A path. My breath catches. Hope is a physical thing, warm and dangerous. Orpheus. Ascent velocity increased. Estimated time to dome boundary. 1 minute, 12 seconds. Hale laughs, a raw burst of disbelief. We're doing it. We're actually doing it. I stare at the HUD, watching pressure drop in small steps. My mind tries to picture orbit, the relay buoy, a clean comm signal, the idea of hearing another human voice that isn't an echo. The pod climbs into a region of calmer flow, then the storm learns the vector. The first sign is subtle, a slight increase in pressure behind us, not in front, behind. The pod's rear cameras show the blue haze thickening again, not as turbulence, but as a rising wall. The storm is piling upward beneath us, as if building a platform to push against. Pressure increasing aft, Orpheus reports. Gradient is forming behind ascent. Pod and formation. Deliberate. Hale's laughter dies. No. He punches the thrusters harder. The pod vibrates with effort. The HUD shows ascent rate climbing, but the pressure behind continues rising. It's like running up a slope that is being lifted as you climb. I whisper. It watched the launch. It watched the trajectory. Hale snarls. It can't just... The pressure wall behind us surges. The pod jolts forward as if shoved, then immediately slows, like pushing through thickening gel. The storm in front is still thinner, still promising, but the atmosphere is densifying around the pod itself, compressing into a cocoon. The corridor is not closing from above. It is being built from behind. Orpheus. External pressure increasing uniformly around pod. Rate accelerating. Hale's hands shake on the controls. We need to reach the dome boundary. Once we're out, it can't... Orpheus cuts in. Blackout dome boundary is shifting. Boundary is... Ascending with pod. Dome appears to be recentering. I feel my blood go cold. It's moving the dome. Hale's voice cracks. That's impossible. Not impossible, Orpheus replies. Observed. The pod's comm panel lights briefly. For a moment, a signal appears. A carrier tone. Hale's eyes widen. Orbit? The carrier tone resolves into a voice. Ruiz's voice, perfectly clear. Nolan, Hale, report status. My stomach twists. That's not her. The voice repeats, same cadence. Nolan, Hale, report status. Hale stares at the panel, breathing hard. It's copying her now. Orpheus confirms. No external link established. Signal is local replication. The pressure around the pod increases again. The hull creaks. A deep, stressed sound that feels like bone bending. The HUD shows external pressure climbing, not falling, despite our ascent. We are going up into higher layers, and yet the environment around us is becoming heavier. The storm is bringing the deep layer with it. It is wrapping us in the conditions that kill. Hail whispers, it's making its own depth. Lightning flashes ahead, and for an instant the haze parts enough to reveal something that turns my stomach to ice. A structure, not a solid object. A formation of filaments braided into a vast lattice above us, like an atmospheric ceiling. It spans the corridor, a web of ionized bands, each strand carrying redirected lightning like veins of light. A roof built to catch us. Orpheus. Obstacle detected. Filamentary lattice forming above a scent vector. Probability of collision or compression high. Hail tries to bank left. The pod responds sluggishly. The pressure cocoon resists change, like we're inside thick syrup. The lattice above shifts, repositioning, staying ahead. It knows where we will go. It learned our escape direction, I say, voice hollow. Hale's eyes are wet. But we had a corridor. I had a corridor, it allowed. I whisper. The pod's alarm chimes. Hull stress nearing tolerance. Systems begin to flicker. Heater draw spikes. Oxygen scrubbers strain against pressure differential. Orpheus speaks quietly. This corridor is false. It is a controlled environment designed to observe ascent behavior. A test corridor. A lesson. I feel something inside me break, not dramatically, but like a knot untying. Of course it didn't stop us at the bay. Of course it didn't crush the pod instantly. It wanted to see what we do when we believe we can win. The lattice above tightens, the pressure cocoon compresses, and the pod, still climbing, begins to slow anyway, caught inside an intelligence that does not hate us, does not rage, does not even notice our suffering as suffering. It simply collects data. The pod keeps climbing, but it is the kind of climb you feel in numbers rather than motion. The HUD says altitude is increasing. The inertial sensors report upward acceleration. Hale's hands push the thrusters to their upper safe margin. And yet the world around us thickens. External pressure climbs in steady steps, as if someone is turning a dial. The storm is not chasing anymore. It is enclosing. Orpheus speaks in that calm voice that has begun to sound like restraint. Hull stress at 62%, pressure differential increasing, thermal load rising. Hale laughs once, bitter. We're going up and getting crushed anyway. That's not physics. It is physics, I say quietly, surprising myself. Just not ours. The lattice above us becomes clearer with each lightning flash. It isn't a single barrier but a layered geometry, filaments braided into overlapping arcs that shift when hail banks, like a net that anticipates the fish. Every time the pod tries a new vector, the net reshapes. Not fast, not frantic, patient. The pressure cocoon tightens in time with our maneuvers, as if the storm is measuring how much force it takes to slow us without breaking us too soon. I feel my own breathing change, shallow and quick inside the helmet. The suit's oxygen feed compensates, but the taste of recycled air has a sharp edge now, as if the scrubbers are working harder. Scrubber efficiency down 4%, Orpheus announces. Filter saturation increasing. Hale's eyes flick to the life support panel. Already? Orpheus. External pressure is increasing intake resistance. Compensatory power draw rising. Everything is connected. More pressure means more work. More work means more power. More power means more heat. More heat means more signature. The storm is squeezing us into revealing ourselves. A sudden shudder runs through the pod, a deep metallic complaint that vibrates through my spine. The hull stress indicator jumps. Hull stress at 70%, Orpheus says, approaching tolerance. Hale's hands tighten. We hit the lattice. No collision detected, Orpheus replies. Compression field increasing. Compression field. Not impact, not turbulence, a shaped force. Lightning arcs along the filaments above, tracing loops that look almost like circuitry. For a moment, the pattern resembles the storm wall rings that formed around Helios 9, but scaled up, refined. Park's earlier words come back to me, coupling. Field effect. Charge pathways. Except now it feels like I'm watching a brain's synapses fire. Hale's voice is raw. We need to break through. Punch it. He rams the thrusters harder, pushing them toward red line. The pod vibrates violently. The HUD flickers again, a brief stutter, then stabilizes. Orpheus. Thruster output at 92%. Risk of engine failure increasing. Hale snarls. Better than being crushed. The pressure climbs again. The pod slows. Not a sudden stop. A gentle, humiliating deceleration, like being caught in a hand. I grip the harness straps. My knuckles ache. Then something worse happens. The comm panel lights. A tone, not a carrier, a rhythm. The hull pulse. It comes through the pod speakers as a low, modulated vibration, not loud, but impossible to ignore, like a heartbeat under the floor. Hale's eyes widen. That's the station pulse. Orpheus answers. It is an external, low-frequency pressure modulation coupling into pod structure. It followed us, I whisper. Hale shakes his head. No, we carried it. The pulse shifts subtly, and with it, the pod's internal vibration changes. The resonance lines up with the pod's frame, amplifying stress at specific points. The hull stress indicator climbs by 2% without any external pressure change. My throat tightens. It's using resonance to weaken us. Orpheus confirms. Resonant coupling increasing, structural fatigue accelerating. Hale slams a hand against the console. Can we damp it? Orpheus. Limited. Internal dampers can adjust within narrow band. External modulation is adapting. Adapting. Always adapting. I glance at the telemetry module, its light still steady. The record remains, but what good is a record if no one receives it? The comm panel lights again. This time, a voice comes through. Not Ruiz, my own. Record everything, my voice says, perfectly calm. Record everything. My blood turns to ice. I don't remember saying those words out loud in the pod. Hale stares at me. Did you? No, I whisper. That's not. The voice repeats, identical. Record everything. Orpheus speaks over it. External replication of internal audio detected. Source is local. No external link. The storm isn't just copying transmissions anymore. It's copying us, our habits, our phrases, our rhythms. It is building a model that includes the way we speak when we're afraid. Hale's face tightens, and in his eyes I see the moment he realizes our minds have become part of the environment. He inhales slowly, forcing calm. Okay. We keep quiet, we reduce inputs, we coast. He throttles down slightly, not out of surrender but strategy. Less output means less signature. Less signature means fewer data points. For a few seconds, the pressure cocoon's rate of increase slows. It feels like progress. Then the storm answers anyway. The cocoon tightens again, not in response to our output, but to our silence, as if it has learned that silence is also a strategy. Orpheus. Pressure increasing, cause not correlated with thruster output. Hale's jaw clenches. So it's not reacting to what we do now, it's acting. I stare at the lattice above, and a thought forms with sick clarity. It isn't trying to stop us from escaping. It is trying to perfect the conditions under which we cannot. A system doesn't need malice, it only needs optimization. Orpheus, I say, voice dry. Probability of escape? A long pause, longer than any I've heard from it. Then, probability of reaching dome boundary before structural failure, 9%. 9. Hale laughs, and it sounds like choking. 9%, we can work with 9. Orpheus continues. Probability of dome boundary remaining stationary relative to pod, 1%. Hale's laughter dies. The dome is moving with us. The boundary is not an edge we can cross. It is a property the storm assigns. I feel something hollow out inside me. The kind of acceptance that doesn't soothe, only clarifies. The pod's life support panel flashes yellow. Scrubber efficiency down 12%, Orpheus reports. Oxygen reserve consumption increasing. Temperature rising due to compression heating. Compression heating. The pod is being warmed by being squeezed, like air in a piston. The heat builds, raising our internal temperature, even as the outside is cold. Sweat beads inside my helmet, trickling down my neck. The pod shudders again, and a new alarm sounds. Thruster chamber pressure anomaly, Orpheus says. Engine 1 output degrading. Hale swears under his breath, switching to Engine 2. The pod yaws slightly, corrected by stabilization jets that cough and sputter under rising load. Engine 1 failing, Hale mutters. It's squeezing the fuel lines. The storm has learned our weak points. The hull pulse comes again, deeper now, and the pod's frame vibrates in sympathy. Stress climbs to 82%. The lattice above descends, not moving physically like a solid object, but tightening its filament geometry, increasing induction, shaping pressure like fingers pressing down on a balloon. I whisper, "It's not closing the sky." Hale looks at me, eyes wet, jaw trembling. "Then what is it doing?" "It's building a ceiling," I say, "so it can measure how we brake when we hit it." The comm panel lights once more. Ruiz's voice returns, perfectly clear, perfectly false. "You made it," the voice says. "Hold course. You made it." Hale flinches as if struck. I close my eyes for a second, and in that darkness, I see Helios 9's corridors sealing one by one, lights dimming, frost growing. I see Park's hands trembling over the vent protocol. I see Ruiz dragging her toward Pod 2. I realize we may never know what happened to them. The storm doesn't need to show us. It doesn't need to punish. It only needs to continue. When I open my eyes, the HUD flickers, and for an instant, the altitude numbers are replaced by something else. A repeating sequence of our own internal timestamps, as if the storm is trying to speak in our language. Then it vanishes. Orpheus says softly, "Structural failure projected in 2 minutes, 30 seconds if pressure increase continues." Hale's voice is hoarse. Then we push. He slams Engine 2 to maximum. The pod vibrates like it might tear itself apart. For a few seconds, the altitude climbs faster. The lattice above tightens. The pressure climbs faster too. We are accelerating into a ceiling that is being built for us in real time. And somewhere in the blue, an intelligence that does not hate us is refining the exact moment we become impossible. The last minutes do not feel like a battle. They feel like a demonstration. Engine 2 screams through the pod's frame as vibration. The thrusters are still producing thrust, still fighting, but every fraction of upward gain is answered by an equal, deliberate increase in pressure. The storm does not rush. It does not lash out. It simply adjusts. A thermostat correcting a room, a hand tightening a lid. Orpheus keeps talking because it was built to talk. Its voice becomes a metronome of decline. Hull stress at 89%. Scrubber efficiency down 21%. Engine 2 chamber temperature rising. Hale's breathing is loud. Mine is louder. Sweat runs down my spine inside the suit. The pod is too hot now, not from engines, but from being compressed. Each tightening of the cocoon turns pressure into heat, and heat into urgency. The lattice above looks closer. In truth, it might not be moving at all. It could be the same distance away, but the medium between us has densified so much that light behaves differently, making the net seem to descend. A ceiling doesn't need to fall if the room shrinks. The comm panel lights again. This time, it doesn't give us a voice. It gives us a tone. The hull pulse, amplified, modulated in a pattern that makes my teeth hurt. Orpheus's diagnostic displays flicker as the resonance aligns with the pod's internal wiring. A new warning flashes. Guidance loop instability, Orpheus says. Control response degraded. Hale fights the stick anyway, muscles rigid, jaw clenched so hard I can see it trembling under his helmet seal. "Stay with me," he mutters, not to Orpheus, not to me, but to the pod itself. Like you can convince metal to be brave. I look at the altitude indicator. It still rises. Slowly now. Painfully. 1 meter. 2. 3. It's the kind of progress that makes you forget what you're paying for it. A soundless crack travels through the pod frame. I don't hear it with ears. I feel it as a change in vibration, a sudden shift in the resonance like a string snapping. Orpheus. Microfracture detected in forward hull ring. Hale's eyes flick toward me, and in them I see the same thought we both have. Forward ring means the nose. The pod is beginning to fail where it meets the pressure first. Can we reroute stress? Hale asks, voice raw. Orpheus pauses. No. No from Orpheus is rare. It usually offers options, percentages, workarounds. This time it gives a clean boundary. The pod shudders again. The harness bites into my shoulders as the cocoon tightens and then holds. For a moment, the pressure stops increasing. My body tries to believe this is mercy. Then Orpheus speaks softly, as if recognizing a pattern that matters. Pressure increase has paused. Hale exhales, a sound that almost becomes a laugh. It's letting up. I stare at the external pressure readout. It is not decreasing. It is holding steady. And the altitude is still rising, inching upward through the false corridor. I understand, suddenly, what the pause is. Not mercy, calibration. The storm is checking the new setting, seeing how the pod behaves under this exact force. Then the pressure increases again, a small increment as gentle as turning a screw. The forward microfracture expands. Orpheus. Fracture propagation accelerating. Hale's voice cracks. We're so close. I don't know if we are. We never actually saw orbit. We saw thinner blue. We saw a suggestion of darkness. We saw what it wanted us to see. The comm panel lights again. Ruiz's voice returns, almost tender. Nolan, it says. Tell me you see the stars. My throat closes. The voice is perfect. The cadence. The slight rasp Ruiz gets when she hasn't slept. Hale flinches, eyes watering. Stop, he whispers, as if speaking to the storm might make it stop playing. Orpheus speaks, over the voice. Audio replication frequency increasing. It may be attempting to influence crew decision-making. Influence, I repeat, and it tastes wrong. Not because it's impossible, because it implies intent, and intent implies malice. But this feels like something else. A system running experiments. It doesn't care if the subject screams. It only cares if the subject changes. The pod's internal temperature climbs another degree, another. The heater system cycles off automatically to reduce load, but it doesn't matter. The heat is coming from outside now, from the compression itself. The oxygen scrubber whines, drawing more power to push air through a filter that is growing clogged under pressure. Orpheus. Scrubber efficiency down 30%. Hale whispers, we're going to suffocate before we crush. Maybe, I say, and even that sounds like bargaining. The hull pulse changes rhythm. It no longer resembles a heartbeat. It resembles a count. 1, 2, 3. A spacing that feels like steps taken by something too large to see. The pod suddenly slows further, not because thrusters weaken, but because the medium around us becomes thick enough to resist motion. The ascent rate drops. The altitude number still climbs, but now in fractions. Hale slams the controls, trying to push more. Engine 2 coughs. The output dips. Orpheus. Engine 2 fuel line compression detected. Output degrading. Hale's face tightens in despair. It's pinching the line. A gentle squeeze, a precise one, not crushing the entire pod, just the artery that feeds the engine. It has learned where to press. The pod begins to yaw. Hale corrects, but the guidance loop is unstable. The pod wobbles slightly, like a tired swimmer in a current. Outside, lightning traces the lattice above again, and for a heartbeat, the net looks like an eye, iris and lid and glowing veins. Not because it is an eye, because our minds interprets. Organization as a gaze, because being watched is the oldest fear we have. Orpheus. Hull stress at 96%. Hale's voice is hoarse. Nolan. If we... He stops. There is no sentence that completes the thought. If we what? Pray. If we push harder. If we had stayed. If we had never drilled. None of those change the numbers. The pressure cocoon tightens again. Not a slam, a steady increase. A squeeze that holds. The forward hull ring deforms. The pod frame creaks in a way that feels like metal thinking. A new microfracture forms along the viewport edge, a thin white line like frost. I stare at it. That line is the story's edge. Once it spreads, the pod becomes a crushed shell. My mind goes very calm. I realize, with a clarity that feels like stepping outside myself, that the storm never needed to destroy us quickly. Quick destruction teaches nothing about how humans endure. Slow destruction teaches everything. Hale's hands are still on the controls, still moving, still trying. His resilience is almost holy in its futility. I speak into the recorder without raising my voice, because there is no need to shout at a planet. This is Dr. Nolan Pierce, I say. Final log. Helios 9 descent resulted in localized blackout. Storm behavior exhibited adaptive, predictive response to crew survival strategies. The environment appears to function as a distributed intelligence. It is lethal without hostility. It learns without malice. It optimizes. The hull pulse modulates, and for a second I think it matches my words, like it is listening to the summary. Maybe it is. Maybe language is just another data set. The pressure increases one last increment. The pod does not explode. It compresses. The seats groan. The harness digs into my ribs. The viewport line fractures further, spreading like a crack in ice. Engine 2 dies with a shiver through the frame. Orpheus speaks very quietly. Structural failure imminent. Hale looks at me. His eyes are wet. His lips move. I can't hear the words, but I know what they are. We almost made it. The pod frame folds, not all at once. A gradual collapse as pressure fields rise and the atmosphere becomes a fist around us. Metal yields, layer by layer, until there is no shape left for the inside to be inside. My recorder continues for a few seconds, capturing only vibration and the final stutter of oxygen flow. Then that stops too. There is no debris field. No flare of fragments thrown into orbit. The pod is crushed silently inside endless blue clouds, its matter compacted and carried downward into the storm, like a thought swallowed before it reaches speech. Above, the blackout dome loosens, it expands, it dissolves. Uranus returns to normal storm activity, banded and distant, beautiful from orbit. Mission Control hears nothing. Orbit sees nothing. No one receives the log. And somewhere beneath the clouds, the system that learned how we survive continues to turn, indifferent and complete, waiting for the next intrusion that will teach it something new. That concludes tonight's transmission. Some storms pass, some storms change direction, and some storms learn. If you're still here at the end, thank you for riding the signal all the way down. Let me know what you think happened beneath those clouds. Until next time, keep your instruments steady, and don't assume the silence above you means you're alone. Void Signal, signing off.